Standing on the promises of Christ.
In Genesis chapter 3, we see man disobeying God for the first time and end up losing that connection with God, because once we do things that God is not pleased with, we lose that connection with Him. Also observe in the calling of Abraham, when you look at Genesis chapter 12, He calls Abraham from a place where he was, and then He says, I will direct you to a place that I'm going to give you at the end. So this promised land that Abraham is promised, God was going to be fully involved and in control of the journey that Abraham is going to take from point 1 to point B. Even the steps that he's going to take from point 1 to point B was going to be directed by him as God. When he also interacts with Israel, this is what we see as well, because his interaction with Israel also concerns the direction and the steps that Israel is supposed to be taking in this world. You look at how God deals with Israel. The first thing that we see in Genesis, in Exodus chapter 3, verse 7, is that when the people were in captivity in Egypt, we realized that they cried to God because they realized that their situation is dire, and the only way to come out of that situation was to call to God, and God would come and direct their steps. You see, verse 7 of Exodus chapter 3 says to us, Then the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know they are suffering. So they cried out to God. And after they cried out to God, He was generous enough to be able to send them someone who's going to take them out of that place. Exodus chapter 2 also says to us in verse 23 that during those many days, the kings of Egypt died, and the people of Israel groaned because of their slavery and cried out for help. Their cry for rescue from slavery came up to God. So they cried to God because they realized that they're in slavery, and the only way for them to get out of slavery is for God to come and deliver them from their slavery. And God does that. He sends Moses to Egypt to go and deliver the children of Israel out of captivity. Then they go to the place where they are living in the wilderness. And then we see the interaction in the wilderness between God and man is that God has always directed the footsteps of men. Even the road that they took in the wilderness was directed by God Himself. Now, He leads them to the promised land. And before they get to acquire and live in the promised land, He directs them. And then He tells them in Deuteronomy chapter 4 verse 40 that He is going to give them statutes and commandments. And if they keep those statutes and commandments, all will go well with them in the promised land. You see, for us to be able to have things that are good for us, we need to have a beautiful relationship with God.
Resting in my Savior as my